strikes Northern California, and we're hearing there are more aftershocks. We want to go to CNN's Jennifer Gray, and no telling when aftershocks stop.
Right, they can be felt for days after the main earthquake, and this happened during the wee hours of the morning. As we know, we had an aftershock of about 2.5 a couple of hours ago. Just in the past hour, we had a 3.6 aftershock that was felt just a couple of miles from the epicenter. And so these can be felt, like I said, for a couple of days. The first 24 hours crucial. And so as we go forward in time, though, they will become less frequent. But I know a lot of people, as the sun is coming up over on the West Coast, they are trying to get up, get out and about, looking at the damage, things like that. But just be aware, these aftershocks are known to happen right after this earthquake. First 24 hours, just be careful out there. It is definitely a dangerous situation. Of course, a lot of these structures not intact. We've seen some of these buildings in the downtown areas have collapsed. A lot of these structures, a total loss in downtown Napa. And so it is dangerous out there, Candy, and folks need to be aware that some of these aftershocks can be felt 24 hours, even days after the main earthquake.
Jennifer Gray, thank you. We will stay in touch. We want to now bring in Janet Upton. She's the Press Information Officer for CAL FIRE, but bringing her in now because, Janet, you also were in the midst of this earthquake. From your perspective, tell me what happened.
Yeah, it was pretty significant. I've been to a couple of them in Southern California in my lifetime. This was very significant shaking. I would categorize it as violent shaking, followed by the undulating, rolling sensation that seemed to last quite a long time.
Wow, and I know it's just beginning to be daylight here. We're now on our screen beginning to see pictures of fires, which we know sometimes come after earthquakes with gas lines, etc. What can you tell me about the damage to your house or the damage that you're hearing about from neighbors, etc.?
Well, I do live in Napa proper in a 1950s type neighborhood. We have chimneys down, up and down the street. I would probably describe the inside of my house as trash. Anything that was standing is not, and everything is off the wall. A lot of heavy furniture down, all the cupboards in the kitchen, dishes out, lots of broken glass, that sort of thing. But everyone inside and in our neighborhood is fine, which I'm thankful for. There's a lot of strong smell of natural gas. We aided the neighbors in turning off the gas at their homes because, as you are probably aware, that's one of the main concerns of firefighters is the aftermath of an earthquake, the gas rupture, a water main rupture, which I understand has happened in downtown Napa. I was just off the phone with the chief of the Napa City Fire Department, Mike Randolph, and he indicated there was a water main break. They have a handful of structure fires in the aftermath of the earthquake that they've been mitigating and responding to. We've heard sirens followed since just after the earthquake, and it's just now kind of beginning to have a little bit of a lull, but there'll be a lot of work today as the sun comes up this morning.
Wow, yes, we'll all have a better idea. I am glad to hear that you are safe, although facing quite a mess. So we will, obviously CNN will be covering this all through the day. Janet Upton, I have a feeling we'll be talking to you as well. Thanks so much for your time.
6 miles south of Napa, that's just north of San Francisco, putting 15,000 people at the center of violent tremors. It is the single largest seismic event in California since that 1989 quake that struck during the World Series 25 years ago. Local rescue officials continue to survey the region for damage. The early reports so far: homes rocked askew, thousands of people without power, streets buckling, storefronts crumbling. One hospital telling us just a few moments ago that they have treated 70 patients so far. None of those injuries, though, life-threatening. And structural fires burning across towns dotting the Napa Valley. With the potential as well for gas leaks, local law enforcement officials are rushing to free some people who are trapped at this moment in their homes. So far, luckily, no casualties, no deaths have been reported. But it will still be a while before we know just how much damage this quake has done. California's Governor Jerry Brown just moments ago issued a statement urging residents to stay calm and assuring them, quote, public safety officials are doing all they can to help residents and those living in the affected areas that should follow their guidance and instruction. Now, geologists say that more than 100,000 people felt very strong shaking, the earth literally moving beneath their feet. I want to go now to Jennifer Gray in CNN's Severe Weather Center in Atlanta. Jennifer, quake 6.1 on the Richter scale. Can you tell our viewers exactly where this struck and how far around that epicenter this was felt?
Yeah, it was about 6 miles south of Napa, and folks felt it anywhere from 25 to 30 miles away. And so we are continuing to feel those aftershocks as well. Most of those have been very, very minor, but we did have one of about 2.5 a couple of hours ago, and just in the past hour or so, we had another one of about 3.6. And so in the next 24 hours, that's a crucial time, but in the next 7 days, and aftershocks can be felt days, weeks, even months down the road. But the next 7 days is really the most crucial time for these aftershocks, and the probability of a magnitude 5.0 or higher is about 54% with an earthquake of this size. And then an earthquake larger than a main shock is less than 10%. And so 54% of an aftershock of about 5.0 or greater in the next 7 days, 54%. And so those aftershocks are a concern as we move forward in time. Of course, most of those are going to be very, very small, but just take care and use caution when you're going out in the streets. Now that the sun is up, it is still early over on the West Coast. Some of those structures are going to be very, very weak. And so as you're assessing all of that damage and folks are out moving about, just be careful. Of course, those aftershocks still a possibility over the next couple of days and even months.
Now, Jennifer, anytime a quake like this strikes close to the ocean, to the coastline, concerns, of course, about tsunami warnings. Are there any warnings yet, or is that danger past?
Yeah, the danger's past. There were no tsunami watches or warnings that were issued, so that was very, very good news with this particular quake.
That is a relief for sure. Thanks very much, Jennifer Gray in Atlanta. We'll be staying in touch with you throughout the day. We're still piecing together just how bad the damage is in and around Napa. A reminder, that's just north of San Francisco. But things could very well get worse. About 30 minutes after the initial quake hit, an aftershock ripped through the area, shaking the Napa region again. I want to bring in CNN producer Augie Martin. He is in San Francisco. Augie, from the ground, what have you seen? What have you heard on the ground there?
Well, Jim, with daybreak about 30 minutes ago, the light ought to help authorities with their efforts to survey the damage and try to rescue those that are trapped. I'm actually in San Francisco proper, about 25 miles south of the epicenter, but it was a fairly good shakedown here that lasted for about 25 or 30 seconds. It was a softer rolling type earthquake. Sometimes we get these very sharp jolts, but this was one of those earthquakes that, while powerful, was more of a rolling type of earthquake. It was felt over a very widespread area. Some earthquakes are felt not over a very wide area, typically because they're deeper, but this one was felt over a very wide area, all the way down to San Jose and even south of there. This did take place up in Napa on a fault that was not the San Andreas fault, which is the one that typically gets all of the publicity, but in famed wine country. So,
Augie, just telling our viewers, we're playing live pictures from the quake area today. We're seeing a house on fire there. This is a great concern for firefighters because of gas leaks, etc. For our viewers who haven't felt an earthquake before, I wonder, Augie, if you could describe that motion, that sense of the earth rocking in waves. How did it feel when you went through this just a short time ago?
Well, typically, as I said, there are two sort of types of earthquakes. There's one that gives off a very sharp, jarring jolt, and then there are other ones that are almost wave-like, that are softer and have a rolling feeling to them. And some of it will depend upon what type of earth surface you're on, whether you're on sand or bedrock. In Napa, a lot of the ground there is sandy based, that used to be part of San Francisco Bay, many millions of years ago. In San Francisco, a lot of us are on bedrock, some of us are on sand, but like I said, this one was a very rolling, if it's possible to call it a gentle earthquake. In some regards, it was a strong but gentle earthquake. It was not at least where I was, it wasn't a super jarring jolt. Nonetheless, it's very startling, especially when it happens in the middle of the night. Even to native Californians, it's always very jarring when you're awakened by shaking. So.
No question. It's an unnerving feeling for anyone who's been through it. Thanks very much to Augie Martin, CNN producer on the ground in San Francisco. A reminder to our viewers, you're seeing live pictures now from the San Francisco area, the aftermath of this 6.1 earthquake which struck in Napa Valley just north of San Francisco. We want to get some perspective now on the size of this earthquake, its impact. Joining me now on the telephone, seismologist as well as director of the Global Alliance for Disaster Reduction, that's Walter Hayes. Walter Hayes, can you put for our viewers this quake into context in terms of size? It's 25 years ago since a 6.9 earthquake caused so much damage in San Francisco. This is 6.1. On the Richter scale, that means nearly 10 times or so, or 1/10 the power of the one that struck in '89?
No, that's the confusion on the geometrical aspect of this. It's nearly 30 times weaker. It's 1/30th of the Loma Prieta earthquake.
That's right, because it's both amplitude and energy. So it's the 30th of the energy, but it's also then the amplitude, which I guess is the wave motion of the quake. Is that right? The shaking, the ground shaking?
Yeah, well, they use the waves to determine the magnitude number. The magnitude number is a measure of energy released. The Loma Prieta released nearly 30 times more energy than this one. It would take 30 of these to equal one Loma Prieta, for example.
Now, as we look at this, though, this is still caused, and again, we're seeing live pictures, walls that have collapsed, there are homes on fire. That is still, even at 6.1, and I believe we're just getting an update now that the estimate has been lowered to 6.0, but this is still a large earthquake. You only have 100 or so, some odd 6.0 or higher earthquakes per year.
That's around the world. You have 1 magnitude 8, 10 sevens, 100 sixes, 1,000 fives, and so on down the line. So we get 10 million a year, all these different sizes. California doesn't always get its share of them. Some other parts of the world get the share. But this is still 30. It would take 30 of these to equal a Loma Prieta earthquake.
Again, we're just seeing the power of it now on the air as we look at live pictures. Walls collapse, some buildings partially collapsed, fires in the Napa area now.
What Arnie was talking about was the Rayleigh wave, the long period wave that gives that rolling motion. The jolt is the P wave. That's the one that causes interior damage, contents to fall all over. The Rayleigh wave would be more destructive to the taller buildings and the weaker buildings, long period.
Let me ask you just very quickly before I let you go. There's a lot of talk of the Ring of Fire. This is the plate that surrounds the Pacific and connects earthquakes and volcanoes in Japan, New Zealand, Chile. We've had very big quakes in recent years in all those places. Does that increase the chances of a major earthquake, the big one, in the San Francisco area in the near term?
Well, it takes time for the strain energy to accumulate. Now, California's had plenty of time for it to accumulate, more likely in Southern California than in Northern California, but don't ever rule out any place. Northern California, 1906, of course, was the big one. There, 1847, the big one in the Los Angeles area. But you got plenty of falls. You got literally thousands, several thousand falls in California. And the Hollister Fall is where this earthquake in that region, and it's more damaging to the city at large than the San Andreas, even though the San Andreas will generate bigger earthquakes. San Andreas is farther away from the big area. And this one is right there, and that's the reason it's so got everybody's attention.
Okay, Walter Hayes, seismologist, thanks very much for helping put this into context. Again, you're seeing live pictures of the aftermath of this earthquake. We're going to hear more. 70 people have been treated for injuries now. Pictures on social media paint a city struggling with chaos. Fortunately, the likelihood for casualties is low. Still, the quake put hallway-sized holes in buildings throughout the area, and crews continue to work to restore power to residents stranded in the dark. California Highway Patrol is also rushing to make sure bridges and crossings have not been compromised by the quake. We have seen some pictures of roads buckling, though, and the valley could still be at risk for even more damage. I want to go now to Jennifer Gray. She's at CNN's Severe Weather Center. Jennifer, can you give our viewers a sense of just how widely and how severely this quake was felt around that epicenter in Napa?
Yeah, we'll try to put some perspective on it because we did hear numbers that over 100,000 people felt some very violent shaking. That's a large number of people. And we know that this happened about 6 miles south of Napa. And this is a graphic that illustrates by color the people that felt the shaking. And we know that people about 20 miles away did feel some of that shaking. And you can see some of these brighter colors of orange. About 15,000 people right around this center felt some of the most violent shaking right around that epicenter. And then as the colors get lighter out, you can see the lighter shades of orange and then on into yellow. 106,000 people had very, very strong to severe shaking. And then as you spread out right around Sonoma, we see the strong shaking, what's considered strong with an earthquake, 177,000 people. And then as you spread out even more, of course, the shaking gets less and less. But we had some very, very violent shaking along with this. And it looks like most of the most intense shaking happened right around that epicenter and then right around Napa. And you can see right there where it looks like tall buildings, those are actually population, where it's mostly the most densely populated areas right there, right around Napa. That's where it looks like most of those people had the most intense shaking, as we're seeing from those pictures. Downtown Napa, that's where we're seeing some of those structures that are suffered a complete loss. That's where we're seeing a lot of those injuries right there in downtown Napa. So definitely plays hand in hand.
So Jennifer, you always have the quake, then you have the aftershocks. How severe are those aftershocks expected to be, and how long does that period last after the initial quake?
Yeah, well, you can have aftershocks days, weeks, months, even years after an earthquake sometimes. Of course, we have had several of those aftershocks, more than 20, of course, for today. A lot of those very, very minor. We did have one a couple of hours ago, 2.5. We also had another one in the past hour or two of 3.6. Of course, the probability of the next 24 hours to even 7 days, that's the most crucial time where you really want to be on guard with these aftershocks. The probability, though, for the next 7 days of an aftershock with magnitude of 5.0 or greater, in this case, is 54%. And that was issued by USGS. So that's what we're really going to be looking for, magnitude of 5.0, 54% during the next 7 days, Jim.
So certainly not over, and they're still measuring the damage there in Northern California. Thanks very much to Jennifer Gray in Atlanta. Coming up, America's top general says ISIS cannot be defeated.